This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, episode 301, Despicable Me, the Gurlz. Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the #1 place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode. Hey there, animation addicts. My name is Chelsea Robson.
And I'm Morgan Stradley.
Morgan, we have gone back in time to probably one of the greatest eras of animation in our lifetime. One of. And that is 2010. We're going to be doing Despicable Me.
2010 was an amazing year for animation. As I was thinking back, like, wow, there were a ton of movies. This was almost like a renaissance for the industry, not a renaissance for the studio, one studio in particular, but the industry as a whole just had a whole bunch of bangers that came out in 2010. So we had Tangled, Toy Story 3, How to Train Your Dragon 3, How to Train Your Dragon 1. Obviously, Despicable Me, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, we have some B-tier movies, but I'll list them as well because they're still pretty good. Megamind, The Guardians of Ga'Hoole, and Alpha and Omega. So this was kind of the, not necessarily the peak of animation. I think as far as number of animated films released per year, that kind of hit 2014, 2015, 2016, where it just kind of got really out of hand, as the industry typically does, that kind of ebbs and flows, where everyone is kind of super successful and then they start releasing multiple movies. You know, you can see this year, DreamWorks put Megamind and How to Train Your Dragon out. And some of these studios, they just get on such a roll and such a trajectory that they start, instead of going one movie every few years, let's do one movie every year, and then 2 movies a year. And that can bite them in the butt, and then they have to end up scaling back. But this was one of those rising tides lifts all boats. I think all the movies were so good that, you know, people just had high hopes for animation because everything was not letting them down. So we are talking about one of the S-tier movies from 2010, which is Despicable Me.
We're doing this right in time because Despicable Me 4 is coming out. And looking back, we were like, I think we've only done number 3. So
I just assumed we had done this movie, and then
yeah,
just in case when a sequel comes out, let's just make sure that we have all our bases covered, because it's fine to cover the sequel without covering the original, but it's good to have that as a baseline to see what was the springboard that led to this franchise. So yeah, I guess we saw Despicable Me 3 because it was probably, we had press passes and went and saw it, and had no intention of seeing the first one. And then we've also done Minions, episode 99. So we've done those 2, but this has Despicable Me 2, Despicable Me 3, Despicable Me 4 is coming out. There's the Minions, and then there's another Minions sequel, I guess, which is The Rise of Gru. So this is quite the franchise powerhouse. So I guess we can talk about the studio a little bit, and we can also dive into why this is such a franchise that it is. But before we do, we're going to have a little break, and then we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
I'm having a bad day. It's about time that I get my way. Steamrolling whatever I see. Despicable me. I'm having a bad day. If you take it personal, that's okay. Watch, this is so fun to see. Despicable Me.
All right. So for this movie, and I'm going to go a little bit into history of the studio and some of the key people founding it. The movie is Despicable Me. It was directed by Chris Renard and Pierre Coffin. It was released by Universal Pictures. That's who distributed it. And obviously the production company was Illumination Entertainment, which is now just known as Illumination. That's how you know you've made it as a company. When you first start out, the one name that you want isn't available, right? Like the domain is for sale for $100,000 or $50,000. You're like, there's no way. And so then you kind of have multiple, you have two words as part of it. But then and then once you've made it and you're like, no, we're shortening. We are just now known as this. And that's, hey.
We are just X.
Yes, exactly. So it's not the Facebook anymore. It's just Facebook.
Exactly.
So it was released July 9th, 2010. Budget of $69 million. Very, very good. And it did box office worldwide $543.6 million. So this actually was the first film that Illumination had done. So I'm just going to kind of go through their filmography really quick so you can just see, what movies have they done.
Some bangers, really.
Yeah, and kind of give you a time frame. So Despicable Me came out 2010, Hop in 2011, but that's like a hybrid 2D live action. Then The Lorax in 2012. So I'd say about 2 years between their first one and their second one. Despicable Me 2 was in 2013. Minions 2015. So up until this point, they really have been hitting home with the Despicable Me franchise. They had a home run out the gate.
And they're billion-dollar movies.
Yes, and they've really just hit that and continue to go down that path, which, hey, if the shoe fits, why try to change it up?
Billion-dollar movies.
And they're good. If you have something that works, why are you trying to change it,
Yeah. Like adding the Minions in there, it just adds, it's just so many options.
Yeah.
They do such a great job.
So then the year after that, this is the first year they kind of had they were releasing movies about every year, every 2 years, just depending on the kind of their schedule, I'm sure, for release. But Secret Life of Pets in 2016, Sing in 2016, later that year. So that was their first double year. Despicable Me 3 came out in 2017 in June. The Grinch, November 9th, 2018. They've got some really huge franchises. So that's one thing we're going to talk about is that, they get some good IP. Yeah. The Secret Life of Pets 2, in June 2019. Sing 2. In December 2021. So they have no problem going back to the well for sequels. If they have an original film that's a success, they will go back and milk that cow for all it's worth. Minions Rise of Gru in July 2022. Then Super Mario Brothers movie in April 2023. Migration, December 2023. And then obviously Despicable Me 4, which is coming out, I believe, June 2024. So for the most part, they've hit a home run from the very beginning, and it took them a while. They had movies coming out either every year, every other year, but then really hit their stride in 2015 and have had a movie out a year ever since, except for 2020. So fantastic studio. I mean, you look at all of these and I really don't see any duds. Maybe the Lorax probably, not that it was a dud, but it just isn't a movie that people really talk about. It only did $350 million.
Yeah.
And then Migration, I would probably say, is their worst. It did $296 million, but the budget was 72, so you really can't complain there. You know, they've had a few just marginal okay movies, but all these other ones are just phenomenal. But they have the Dr. Seuss contract, essentially. You know, Dr. Seuss is the one, well, not necessarily, because, you know, there's Horton Hears a Who, which was done by other studios, but they did get the Lorax, they did get the Grinch, and the Grinch is one that I think has really made a splash. People really enjoy that movie and watch it again and again.
I liked it.
Do you have any do you have any Illumination movies that, or just history of the studio that stands out to you?
You mentioned Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've had great luck in capturing these really good high ticket and being able to create with the Minions and Despicable Me these IPs that just kind of continue on, as opposed to some other studios that have other ways of bringing people in and capitalizing on their IPs. Like, really, a studio is what they produce. Chris Meledandri is basically the guy to watch, I think. And I've been thinking this for since 2017. I was like, this guy, he's on it.
So let's talk about him. So I pulled up his bio's Wikipedia page, and we're just going to talk about the highlights of his career, because where did this guy come from? You know, he's been the producer for every single Illumination film. He's the founder of the studio. So what is his history? Like, what has made him so good? So he's 64 years old, was born in 1959. And his dad was a men's fashion designer. He's of Italian descent, you know, grew up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And his first job in the industry, he was an assistant to the executive producer of Footloose. And then, so that was in the mid 80s. And then by 1991, he founded his own production company, which is phenomenal. Like, I really appreciate these go-getters that just go out and do it. And part of me wonders if he had the capital from his dad, or if he just kind of bootstrapped it. Who knows? I don't hold it against him either way. You know, how you get your funds is how you get your funds. So, you know, but a lot of people have money and they don't do anything with it, or they don't take risks, or they don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Right.
He definitely did. So he actually went and he worked as a producer doing small films, and they did Cool Runnings, and he did a whole bunch of collaborations with John Hughes. And then eventually he was placed in charge of 20th Century Fox Animation. And the first movie that was under him, under that banner, was Don Bluth's Titan A.E.
Oh, wow.
And he almost got canned for that because it was such a flop and a bomb.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately that was the end of Don Bluth's animation career as we know it for now. But Chris Meledandri, he went on. So Fox ended up acquiring Blue Sky Studios in 1998. And so since he was in charge of Fox Animation's entire animation division, that was kind of a studio underneath the big umbrella studio, if you will. So then he sees the success of that studio, which is Ice Age, Robots, Horton Hears a Who. So we're seeing this Dr. Seuss relationship come in. So I think we can see how it shifted from Blue Sky to ultimately when he left and founded his own. They were like, oh, we know you, and we trust you. So I think that's why that ended up shifting there. So then in 2007, he leaves because he ended up being replaced, and he says, fine, I'm going to start my own studio. So he founded Illumination Entertainment, which is an animation company that's co-owned by Universal Pictures. And they fully finance and own the films. So, he created the studio, but it is really co-owned by them. So it's not like he really bootstrapped this studio from the very beginning. He had a very successful, established distributor partner, which made things much easier for him to get his films out. And, he receives a share of box office earnings as part of his contract. So I'm sure he makes a pretty penny. And as of 2011, he does have an undisclosed stake in the production company, but we're not sure what percentage that is. I obviously think that Universal probably has a 50+ percentage, but you never know. It's interesting. But So, then they go on, and because of his success with the Dr. Seuss estate, he was able to do the Lorax. They did Despicable Me. And then they've, like we just talked about, and went through their filmography. They've just done Despicable Me up the wazoo. Then NBC Universal, which, again, there were more acquisitions and mergers that happened. And so now it's known as NBC Universal. They acquired DreamWorks. So Blue Sky was eventually purchased, recently by Disney, but during this period, DreamWorks is acquired by NBC Universal, which, now they have these 2 animation studios under their belt. They have Illumination, they have DreamWorks. And so he oversees both of them as part of the merger.
Wow.
And then, later he decided that he wasn't going to oversee DreamWorks. He was just going to be a consultant to the studio. But he actually, supposedly they're going to be revamping and reviving the Shrek franchise, and he's involved with that. But, we haven't really seen much of that. But the big thing that I think that is interesting is he's developed this partnership and collaboration with Nintendo. And he's actually, as a result of the Mario movie and everything that happened there, he's on the board of directors for Nintendo, which is shocking because obviously Nintendo is a Japanese-owned company. From what I've heard from Japanese-owned companies, I had a boss that worked for Kumon. Kumon is a math tutoring, and, they have English, tutoring as well, but math is really what they're known for. And my kids are actually in Kumon, and they are a Japanese philosophy and methodology and company. And my boss even said, like, eventually you learn really quick that you don't really stand a chance in the company as an American, because there is very much a hierarchy of the Japanese and the Americans, and you will never get to where you want to be as far as like, a director, or not maybe a director, but, a chief executive officer. It's like, no, that goes to the Japanese. And I think that's just a cultural thing. There's nothing bad about it. That's just kind of how their business works. Every culture is different. So
more power
it's just shocking to me that he's on the board of directors, that he's this foreigner. But I think it's because the partnership and the future of the movie business for Nintendo needs to be so strong that maybe that's why he is there, because he's representing the media entertainment side of the Nintendo relationship, because with this is the theme parks. So anyway, I really liked reviewing everything that he had done. He didn't just come out of nowhere. He isn't necessarily an animator himself. He's a movie man who's just kind of honed in on animation over the years, had, cut his teeth with Blue Sky Studios and really did a lot of great things there to grow that studio. And then, when the time was right, he spread his wings and flew, and Illumination is this powerhouse that it is today.
Proud of him. Good job. Good job, Chris. So when we were looking at the cast for Despicable Me, I go through the IMDb and I just look and I realize, and it just made me laugh so hard, that Julie Andrews is Gru's mom.
Yes.
Like, I had no idea. And maybe I did, but I probably
forget.
I forget, over
For sure,
time.
I did too.
And so I'm looking at this and like, you look at Julie Andrews, who's just Julie Andrews, like the queen, all bow to Julie Andrews. And then you put her as this mom who's cantankerous and meh.
Oh, yeah.
Like all she does.
Such a different character for her.
It's so great. I love it so much. But the main character voice is Gru and is voiced by Steve Carell.
He's so perfect.
He really does amazing on this. And I was kind of late to the game as far as like an Office fan. And even then I still haven't seen like all the episodes, but I've seen my fair share and I like it, and Steve Carell is he does such a good job in this. And as Gru, like he just embodies it. And it's like, no one else could play this character. And then also I didn't realize that Russell Brand was Dr. Nefario.
I would not, if you were to pick one voice actor, no way would I have said Russell Brand.
Yeah.
He's in a totally different place than he was in 2010.
Oh my gosh. Very different place. And I don't know.
Does he even act anymore?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know if they would, after 2020, if they'd accept him.
I mean, I'm sure he's probably still coming back for this role. I'm sure he's probably,
let's see.
You think? If there's a Despicable Me 4, he's probably in it, right?
Let's see. Okay, Despicable Me 4. Kristen Wiig's in it.
I just did a Google search. Is Nefario in Despicable Me 4? Because he wasn't showing up on the cast page, and it says he will return as a minor character in Despicable Me 4. Dr. Nefario is Gru's closest and most loyal friend, and that's from the Illumination Entertainment fan wiki. So,
All right.
I guess we'll see. We shall see. It seems like they've kind of diminished his role. But again, when you get to the 4, you have a lot going on. You have quite the crew of characters and cast of characters. So
And he was never like a big character in this one. Even he was kind of a foil for the girls a little bit.
The girls. So my sister, she's remarried and her husband has 4 girls, and they don't live in the state. They live in a different state, so we see them from time to time. And anyways, we'll do Sunday dinner with the whole family, and my dad will say prayers sometimes, and he'll rattle off people's names, and then at the very end he'll just lump the girls into and bless the girls. And every time he says that, I just think of the girls. Every time I'm like funny. Chuckling under my breath.
I mean, your dad knows their names, right?
We do wonder that sometimes. We wonder if he knows their names and it's just too much to say all 4 to rattle that off, just lumping it into a category. Or does he not know the names? We don't know.
I love your dad. He's great.
So the other character, Kristen Wiig as Miss Hattie is interesting.
Yeah.
Again, another character I would not have pinned down.
Yes. She did a good job of disguising herself in this. And even Will Arnett as Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
All of the characters I felt like were fantastic as voice actors. Meaning I was not able to, I was in the movie and I did not think, oh, that's Will Arnett. Oh,
they were
that's
playing
Russell
a character,
Brand.
not playing, Will Arnett just doing the typical Will Arnett voice.
Right.
Even, obviously Gru is a huge one.
Yes.
So
I mean to say that I was not taken out of the film because of any of these names. And even though all of the names that we just said, I know all of them. And I have more of their personalities in my mind as a person, not as a character that they were playing. Jason Segel was Vector, and we had the Gurlz as Miranda Cosgrove for Margot, Dana Geyer for Edith, and Elsie Fisher for Agnes. So good times. Okay, the other thing that I thought was interesting is you actually had multiple voices as different minions. Which
and they're a lot of the directors. So Pierre Coffin and Chris Renard, they're the directors. Then there's Jermaine Clement, Danny McBride. So I'd have to see if they're also in the production. This seems like these were temp voices that they had just done, and then they kept them because they were so funny. I looked and it said Pierre Coffin used his own voice for the Minions. The official gibberish language is called Mignonese. He speaks multiple languages, so he created the kind of mixed a variety of languages to create this signature high-pitched voice.
Yeah, I like it
for the Minions, and it's great because it is just this other gibberish language. Like it's moments you think you can pick out what language it is, and then it switches, and it's perfect because there's just so many really memorable moments about this film that make it stand out, that make it unique, that make it fun, and the Minions are a huge part. I mean, obviously there is Minion fatigue, or there is, but at the same time, every time I see them, I really do laugh.
And they have great gags.
Yes.
Like some of these gags were so memorable and just like, yes, that's great. I was very impressed. You also had Mindy Kaling made an appearance as the tourist mom.
Speaking of the tourists, you have your classic American tourists, and I just groan and laugh at the same time because if you've ever gone out of the US and go to other countries, you realize, oh my goodness, we are fat. We are a fat, overweight slob nation. We dress in just, like our active wear or our grungy clothes. We're just fat and overweight. And you go to Japan specifically, and like Asian countries, you realize like everyone is fit and trim, and it's shocking. Yeah. Coming back and seeing that, and you have to take care of yourself, but the overall collective of a nation really represents how we are. And it's kind of sad that, the American tourists, that's how they chose to represent us. So, yep.
I mean, it's not a lie in many cases. I will say, though, this movie came out in 2010. I was actually serving a mission for my church at the time. And then I served half of it in San Jose, California, and the other half in Brazil. And when I got to Brazil, this movie had already come out, and I knew it had come out, but obviously I haven't seen it because I've been doing my thing. And I was at like this house, and it was like early on in the time that I was in Brazil, and the kid was over in the corner watching this on TV, or on his TV. And I was just like, I really want to watch it. but I was also like, I wasn't able to understand what was happening because everything was in Portuguese, obviously. And so I was like, I'm going to have to watch this when I get home. And I'm pretty sure this was the first animated movie that I watched when I got home because I was like, I need to see what was happening. But as you were saying, going to different countries and seeing the Americans, since living in Brazil, I also play this game when I go to any tourist attraction. I play Spot the Brazilian because in the same way that you can just tell that somebody is American somewhere, like I can just tell if somebody is Brazilian from like far away, just like their movements and just how the culture kind of has its own way of moving. And so it's just really funny because I like to play that game. It's fun. And I'm almost always right. Almost always.
Nice.
Yeah, I loved this movie just because it's so over the top.
Yes.
Everything is over the top and you love it. And it just makes sense because obviously, and the fact that he would be a criminal mastermind and it's like a cool thing and nobody really knows that it's him. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
But it's great.
Yeah. We're really talking about over the top. The opening scene shows the pyramids being stolen. And that really sets it up. Like what we're here to expect. You know, this is the level of things that are at stake. It's going to be quirky. It's going to be funny, and get ready for a wild ride. And then we shift to Gru, who is our protagonist, but he's a bad guy, and he's this bad guy who's stealing things and does mean things. But at the same time, he's very endearing because he's funny. He has this humor to him that makes him very endearing. So you don't hate him. You know, he's not like this anti-hero where you hate every time you see him, you know, because he's this funny guy played by Steve Carell. It really sells it really well. And then we see his transformation and his character growth. You know, he starts this low level and then he ends up growing. But that opening song, as he's just walking around and Despicable Me, you know, it's perfect. It is so perfect. It's iconic. And I really, you know, talking about the soundtrack, I thought the soundtrack was really good because it didn't use these classic pop tunes that really throw you for a loop and you have all these other associations with the song. You know, like this song is for this movie.
Yes. And
it works so well.
Yeah, it was perfect. And then when later on he's like talking to his neighbor about, it's like, you know, your dog has got a few bombs on my yard. Like, well, you know, dogs, they just do whatever. Yes, if they're not dead. I mean, just kidding, but really, like, oh gosh.
Yeah, and that's perfect. That just establishes the character of who we're supposed to expect this guy is. And yeah, he means business. He's a mean guy. And then we go inside and we're introduced to his minions, which really flip the script. They are funny. They are the polar opposite of him. The name is just so great. They're groupies. They're the pump up crew.
They're anything you want them to be. And like they're basically
they're henchmen. Yeah. They're builders.
Yeah. They're basically this generation's Looney Tunes. And it's just like, you like watching them. They do really weird things but they're all the same, but they're all a little different. And they all have names. And the fact that he knows all of their names. Hey, Kevin.
So funny. Yep.
Jerry.
Yes. Just normal names too.
Yeah. Like, it's fantastic. One of my favorite gags of theirs is when you have one who goes up to the other and like breaks him and he like cracks and he becomes a glow stick inside the AC unit. I was just like, that's amazing. like, how do you come up with that? I don't know. It's amazing.
So then we're introduced to the Gurlz, the Gurlz, and meet Margot, Edith, and Agnes. And I think it's really interesting they use these names. I think they purposely picked names that were really not in vogue.
Yeah.
And that would make these characters stand out. It's funny. I have one of Jared's friends named their daughter Agnes. It was like a family name, but it's like, that is like a grandma name that you never hear anymore. Yeah. All those names are actually totally coming back into vogue. But at the time that I don't think that wave had really started happening yet. So it was like, let's just name them these really old 1920s grandma names that, and they're perfect because there's no other Margot. There's no other Agnes. It's, you know, they stand out and they're not going to be confused for other characters. And they're kind of this collective unit. They each have their own little personalities, but they're these orphan sisters. They're walking around selling Girl Scout cookies. And, you know, that's how they end up having these interactions. And kind of eventually we'll kick off our plot.
You know what's really sad is that your kiddo's age, if you were to tell them like, you know, what does an Ashley look like? And they're like, that's old. I'm like,
Oh, stop it.
But it's true. And it's funny
it is.
how names just like have a life cycle, and they don't spread outside of different generations until generations later when they're like, oh, I guess they're cool again. But like Ashley, I just think of
Ashley's going to be a name that's popular in probably 20, 30 years again.
Probably. Yeah. It'll come
maybe even longer. I don't know.
No, it'll probably be at
Brittany,
least 50 years, I think. Yeah,
right.
The Ashleys and the Britneys, they're going to come back strong, I'm sure.
Yeah. Usually maybe it's when the grandmas start dying or the grandmas are so old that then you want to, remember and pay homage to them. And so then you start using those old names that reminded you of bygone era, right?
Yes. The millennial generation. The geriatrics.
So, there's not really a ton of characters in this movie. I mean, I guess there are. I don't know. I don't know what I would consider like a large cast or a small cast. We have Dr. Nefario, the Russell Brand of it all. And he's funny. He's just kind of the scientist who's a henchman who just does the work and kind of lives in the lair. And then we have the Miss Hattie, who is the matron of the orphanage. And so as I was thinking about this, there really are 4 main villains or antagonists to Gru. We have, obviously, the main one is Vector, who we haven't talked about yet. We have Vector, who's the main supervillain. He's the up-and-coming guy. He's the flavor of the week. Gru's kind of old news, and so he's trying to outdo Vector and one-up him and beat him to the punch. Then we have the banker, who's the financial adversary because he needs the money, he needs the loan. And then we don't realize that there is a conflict of interest there because the banker is the dad for Vector. And so, he never really stood a chance. Then we have, surprisingly, the mom. And this really builds Gru's character because he's very layered in the fact that we see his backstory. We see what motivates him. We see that he has this kind of internal, unresolved childhood trauma from his mom and how she treated him and just kind of disregarded his hopes and dreams as achievements. And he has kind of this need to prove himself.
Meh.
Yes, exactly. So there's the mom who's not, I mean, we never see her. She doesn't really appear, but she's that antagonist that,
she comes in one time and starts showing baby pictures of Gru to the girls.
Yes. Then the last one is the matron of the orphanage, Miss Hattie, and then she's really the antagonist to the girls because she's so unkind to them. She's not compassionate. She's, and they asked, did anyone adopt? She said, no, just really rude.
Edith,
and
you're never getting adopted.
She's like a stepmother in the fact that she doesn't care for them. It's just this overseer relationship. And as a result of Gru loving the girls, she becomes his antagonist and kind of he has to overcome that. So I kind of thought that was interesting that there was multifaceted levels of people that he had to overcome.
Yeah. Then I just think of Agnes, you're never going to be my dad. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
The back and forth relationships of each one of them, you really can figure out who they are. I mean, the mom, she's just, I don't know. There's no motives behind her other than she just is what she is. And then the girls, but you totally get their ideas. And even Dr. Nefario, like we've been working on this for years, you and I, so he's not necessarily jealous of the girls, but he kind of is to the effect that he's a foil to them. And it's like, hey, focus. We're over here. And then, of course, you have Kyle, the dog, is it a dog? I don't know.
Unsure. The creature.
Creature. When they go to the fair, that's one of my favorite parts.
Yes.
He
lets his guard down.
He lets his guard down and he's able to kind of he's like, I'm going to stand up for these girls. Like, hey, no. And he gets to play the hero for probably the first time in his life. And he likes that. It's nice. Well, let's go back to the part where he's actually having to steal this shrink ray from Vector. Or no, let's go back to the bank. I like the bank.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So he's walking into the bank and he first off the fact that evil villains apparently need loans. And I'm like, well, I mean,
I thought the same thing.
Like, okay. Well, it's from BlackRock, obviously. I mean, allegedly.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking that the debtor is slave to the lender. I am very much against being in debt. I think we live in a world, OPM, other people's money, man. You use other people's money and you can leverage it. And it sounds good because if it works, sure, it's going to work really, really well. But then if it doesn't work, you're totally screwed way more than you would have been versus if you just pay off your debt or never get in debt and then take a slower route, kind of a slow and steady, a tortoise and the hare situation.
Yeah.
And then start financing things with cash and paying yourself. No one ever owns you.
Yeah.
No one has leverage on you. You don't have that fear or just that insecurity in your mind that, there's always someone under your thumb, goof. And, so I'm always been, no debt. And so seeing him, I'm like, even the bad guys need loans.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Well, he's walking through at the bank and you see these along the pillars, you have people holding up these pillars. And then as you get closer and closer, they just get more crushing and crushing. And I'm like, yes, that's what death feels like.
Yes. Very astute.
I was like, this is very fitting. I like it. That's where we meet Vector. And he just thinks he's just this annoying little punk kid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like talking to him, and then finds out later that he's the one that stole the pyramids.
Right.
What?
Yes. Never underestimate your enemy.
Yes. But when you actually go to Vector's lair, you have the pyramids there, like just painted so they look like the sky. Oh, it's amazing. That's a great little gag. I like it.
This movie's great. Yeah. So we switch between Gru as the main character, what he's going after. It's very clear what his motivations are. The girls, he ends up adopting them, which is so, again,
just for the
he's
one
this
thing.
villain who does these despicable things because he's so self-interested. He's only in it for himself. And so whereas he's going to emotionally manipulate these girls so that way he can just basically infiltrate his rival's lair, and then he's going to dump them back on the steps of the orphanage. Despicable. This movie title is apropos.
Yes. Well, first he sees that the girls are able to actually talk to Vector, and Vector lets them in and actually orders cookies from them, because it is very relatable that Vector lets them in because of the Girl Scout cookies. And it's not like Girl Scout, but yeah, it's basically Girl Scout cookies.
Yes. It's the knockoff Girl Scout brand. Yeah.
Wait, do you have these kind? It's like, yes. Okay.
Coconutties.
And it's like, yeah, I get that.
And it was just so funny that, this secret lair that has a shark infested moat and all these laser beams and these security, he sees that, Girl Scouts are at the front door, let them in, that's the most disarming thing, or just some innocent little girl selling cookies. Sure. Yeah. What harm could they do? Little does he know. So that's where his naivete comes in, because the true villain would always suspect everyone.
Yes.
But he is very naive. He's just kind of a dopey, he's the banker's son, so clearly he's the rich guy who has just had kind of everything given to him. And he has potential as a villain, and he really does a lot of things. But man, is he just a dope, with his design is so perfect. The nose, he's not this attractive guy.
The runner's shoe.
He had the runner, sweatsuit with the belly and just the lameness of him all around. You can tell he wasn't the cool jock at school, which, hey, as we learn, a lot of times these supervillains are the guys who end up ruling the world are the nerds. Never discredit the nerds, ladies.
Never. And as I have learned, even the short ones sometimes
especially the short ones.
Especially the short ones. They grow. And then you feel bad.
Yeah, sometimes they grow to 6'8", and you've lost your chance at that point.
Dang it. You said that Vector is pretty lame. One of my favorite quotes in this is when we are introduced to Dr. Nefario, and he's like, "I am so sorry to tell you this. I'm sorry, so sorry." And he's like, "Wait, what's going on?" And he's like, "This man who came in and stole the pyramids, and they're saying that he makes all the other villains look lame." Down to the minions. Just so great. I feel like the relationship that we see with Gru and this goal of going to the moon is really well done. and it shows off the meh of how his mom was just like never really there. But also the going to the moon or the stealing the moon reminds me of the TV show The Tick. Did you ever see that one?
Okay. Oh, The Tick, of course.
Yeah. So The Tick, and he has one of his nemesis is Chairface, and it's literally a guy with a head that is a chair. And so Chairface has decided to write his name on the moon, but he gets stopped halfway. And so it's just a CHA. And so like for every episode later, you see the moon and it says chair on it. I'm like, oh, stealing the moon is great. Never fails.
Speaking of the moon, they do end up stealing the moon. So first they have to get the shrink ray, which they do. And, unfortunately for Gru, he gets the shrink ray. He shows the shrink ray to the banker, which that was the collateral, essentially, that the banker wanted him to have to show that he had the capability to even steal the moon in the first place. And then the banker just ultimately says, no, I don't choose you. And he's really downtrodden. He's sad. And then, they basically crowdfunded, or the company now becomes an employee-owned company where the employees own the shares because all the minions end up pitching in, and even the Gurlz do it too. And so then they're able to self-finance the rocket, which, hey, apparently didn't take that much money in the first place. And off they go, and they steal the moon.
Kevin's crown. Like, that's the first time that showed up. So it's like, oh yeah, I like that. Later on in the Minions movie, they pay that off. There were a lot of payoffs. Like there's the one where Dr. Nefario is giving this like floating juice or floating something to all of the minions, and not all of them, but like a select amount. And then he was like, oh, I should have closed the ceiling, as the one just goes flying away. It's like, he'll be okay, right? Yeah, probably. But
then we see him later.
Yeah, you just see him later, and he's just like enjoying the sights of space. And he's like, whoa, hey.
Oh, that's what I love. Very great story writing and comedy is when you go back to those gags and you finish it off, or you hit it again. And so that was very enjoyable, and it was very satisfying to see them. He wasn't forgotten, and he actually said, hey, we pick him up on the way back.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the Arrested Development kind of way of paying things off.
Yes.
Where it's like you have to get through at least 3 episodes, and then it's like the ball is rolling, and you just everything is a payoff, and you just love it. So that needs to happen more often. I love it so much.
So they get the moon, and we see his character grow. There's so much development for Gru.
Yes.
And he finally gets what he's been wanting this whole time, that he's used so many people to achieve this goal. And this even goes back to a goal, talking about overcoming the different villains. Like, he's overcome Vector. He's overcome the banker by doing it himself. He's even overcome his mom, who, even as a child, he wanted to go to the moon, and she couldn't care less. So check. He's vanquished them all. And then in that moment, he realizes it's for naught. He looks at his watch immediately and says, oh, like, I want to be there. I want to be at the recital.
Yeah.
And so he rushes back, and then it's the classic. We make it seem like, oh, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? And then when he finally gets there, it's the empty room with the janitor sweeping up.
You're too late, man.
How many movies have that scene?
That's it. Yeah.
Jingle all the way.
Oh, that's the one that you pull right out of your hat, like right on.
I love that movie so much.
I've actually never seen it. I know. We'll have
to. Okay, we need to do a patron episode where we watch it, because the patrons get special episodes that wouldn't really fit the main podcast.
Yeah.
We should do that around Christmas, because oh my gosh, I want to see what you think as someone who didn't grow up with it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Like, is it just like, okay, that was fine, or like, wow, you're right, that was great.
I mean, that goes back to our discussion on, kids movies nowadays, and the fact that we don't have those B-level movies that are just fun and will live rent-free in our minds for the rest of our lives.
So we kind of skipped over this. One thing I like is I just kind of appreciate it. So we see these different moments that show the progression of Gru and his relationship with the girls. And it's the first time that they go to bed that they kind of have this routine that they do. So when they're in the orphanage by themselves, they're saying their prayers. And I thought that was cool because modern movies really are afraid to show people praying.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, like, no, we can't have any religion. It's like, who cares? Some people are religious. Some people pray. Actually, a variety of religions pray.
Yeah.
So you can check a lot of boxes off. It's kind of a normal thing. The non-religious people meditate, which is kind of the same thing,
You're
So
right.
they say their prayers, and I like that. And then we see the next phase in the middle where it's the first night with Gru, and they have these established routines that they like to do, and they have to loop him in on it. And he's like, good night, girls. He just wants to shut the door and have them go to bed. Because like he doesn't see themselves as their dad. He just sees themselves as like, okay, like, you're here for a temporary,
Right.
like,
You're my tool.
I want to limit my amount of interactions with you as much as possible because this isn't a thing. But then no, like they loop him in. They say, no, you're going to do this. So they say the prayers. They read the story. And then they need the
puppets.
kiss. Wait, is the kiss at the final?
The kiss is at the very end.
Okay.
Where
So that
they,
the very end,
because
we
they're
see
like,
that.
oh yeah, well, you need to kiss us goodnight. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. And then at the very end, he does. And
And then the third time, when he's actually the dad, the first time he reads their book, which is the Three Little Kittens book. And then it's just so cute. He's written his own book. And the stories in those books were so cute. Like the writers were really great. Like it feels like a children's story. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's poignant. It tells a little story that it feels like a children's book, and it tells a story within the story.
Yes.
Both of them. The kitten's book and then the one that he writes. It's just so cute. And then the nose, the unicorn nose, horn.
That was the best.
It's a great gag.
Oh, so great. I felt like this movie was so balanced. It had the fun, it had the quirky, it had the depth. It was a very like tender moment when he actually comes around, and at the end when he's trying to save the girls and they're like, you dropped us off, and like, yeah, I know I did, and I'll never do it again ever. So, and then at the very end where Margot comes around and said, and he's giving each one of them a kiss, and then she ends up like getting up and hugging him, saying, I love you. And they say, I love you back. And it's just like, it's so sweet. Like, I felt like that's how you make a movie. Like you want to balance these things in a way that feels very satisfying. And that's what they did with this.
I mean, I didn't feel when I was watching this, like, okay, I got to sit down and watch this movie. Let's look for the good. It was just enjoyable all around. It didn't feel like a kid's movie. Like some movies are kids' movies.
Yes.
This didn't feel like a kid's movie. It just felt like a movie with really fun, interesting characters, funny moments, gags. I loved it.
I did too. Are we actually?
Well, we of course, before we give our rating, we got to give credit and shout out the good old dance party. Those will never die.
Oh my gosh. I felt like, but the thing is, like, that was the other weird thing about this movie is it just had so many endings. You had
it's like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. You had this moment where he comes in and the I love you scene, and then, okay, now I got to kiss all the minions. Okay. And then
that was funny.
And then next is like, oh, now we're going to have a dance party. Oh, okay. Now it's just the minions going to be doing all these random little things throughout the credits. So it was just like, it just kept going. But I do like the good old dance party. It was like a thing that Shrek really got rolling. And
yes,
you had so many other movies that followed suit after that. But it works. And it's like, hey, let's have a party. Okay.
Well, I mean, because there's this dance storyline that, they're doing their recital for the whole crew.
That's right.
Because, he missed it, and it's fun. And, we get to see different personalities, and hey, a bunch of minions dancing around is always good too.
Exactly.
So, all right. So what are your last thoughts and rating for the film?
I think this is a 4.5 stars for me. Like, it's just so well done. It doesn't have like perfect replay value for me. I'm not going to go back and want to watch this anytime that I want to watch a random movie, but every once in a while I'm like, yeah, I do want to watch that. And I think maybe that's just because we've had so many other iterations of Despicable Me. So going back and watching the first is kind of like I feel like I'm past that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's just at the beginning, and it's not because I'm over it. It's just
there's a little bit of fatigue with just turning this on in general at this point.
Yeah. But if this were its own thing and it's only, I would definitely have watched this multiple times, and definitely if I were younger. So all that said, 4.5 stars.
Yeah. So it's funny because as I turn this movie on, instantly, it's just, I'm like flooded back. I remember seeing this first time in theaters. I just remember I've seen this movie so many times, and I'm just thinking in my mind, I'm like, why have I seen this movie so many times? It's just, I just must have watched it a lot when it first came out. It must have been, something that I did with groups of friends because it was funny. Like even young adults really enjoyed this movie at the time. It was a fun thing to do.
And that was the other thing that happened at the last Minions release is it became this like Gen Z thing where everybody got dressed up and went to the premieres for this. That was nuts. Like that was a TikTok thing, obviously, but the fact that it happened was like, that's amazing.
Yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of depth to Gru and the characters and the conflict, great gags without being really like dumb and over the top. There's a little bit of potty humor here and there, but it's not too bad. Great initial, first freshman effort for Illumination. I mean, they really hit a home run here.
Yeah.
And did such great things, and it kicked their studio off and really set them on this trajectory to where they are now. The movie stands up. I think it still looks good now. The music doesn't feel dated because they appropriately used songs that hadn't really been used anywhere else, and so you're not associating it with other things. And I think that really matters to me. Actually,
it really does.
So I like that. Like this movie the songs in this movie feel like this movie. It just like it is this, and it's not something else. Gru, love him. I can see why we have so many. The Minions, they're just fantastic. So really, really great movie. 4.5 stars. Not quite 5. That's reserved
it's so
for things
hard to
like
do a 5, like
Toy Story 3 and
right.
the Beauty and the Beast of the world, right? But there's just, I enjoyed it. Had a great time.
Well, we want to know what you guys thought about this movie. If you want to go to our voicemails, as you know, we love hearing from you. So go to rotoscopers.com/voicemails or dial, if you're living within the United States, you can call 406-646-6575.
All right. Our next movie is going to be Despicable Me 4. So we are excited to go hit up the screening for that one. Check it out. We are fresh with our Despicable Me-ness, and we're going to see how the fourth one compares. So we're bookending the franchise, ignoring the Minions. We did number 1. Now we're going to be doing number 4. So it's going to be interesting to see this progression, this time warp of Gru. He has a baby in this one. So how is he going to be able to grow from here? We will let you know in the next episode. Before we hit the fourth one, when it comes out, we've already done Despicable Me 3. So you can go back and check that out in the archives. What is the link for that one, Chelsea?
I don't know.
Rotoscopers.com/every episode ever.
Rotoscopers.com/every episode ever.
At this point, with over 300 episodes under our belt, we can't remember which episodes were what anymore. It's so funny because when we first did the podcast, the first 20 episodes I could name.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
At the time. Maybe not anymore, but like I could tell you the order of all the podcast episodes, but now they just like all blend into one big blur. I'm like, I had to remember that we had even done it, right? So
right.
Be sure to subscribe. Click that follow button if you're on Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere where good podcasts can be found.
Not the bad ones, just the good ones.
That's all we have for today. Until next time, we are the Rotoscopers. You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.